Dear learners, welcome to listen to this module. The topic of the module is pro-social behavior. In the recent pandemic crisis, we witnessed and exhibited behaviors such as caring, helping, volunteering, comforting, rescuing and sharing in our daily life in order to provide support and assistance to others in need. These kinds of behavior are encompassed under the category of pro-social behavior. Pro-social behavior is one of the subject matters of social psychology. Pro-social behavior is an important form of moral behavior. The understanding of pro-social behavior is recognized as being key to harmonious interpersonal and group relations, and it is essential for maintaining positive social relationship and promoting social adjustment. The concept is also key to understanding individual philanthropy and group philanthropy. The concept of pro-social behavior and its psychological foundations are therefore extremely important in furthering research and practice in a number of fields such as education, social work, criminal justice and law. The objectives of this module are as follows: to understand the meaning of pro-social behavior, to know about the bystander's effect, to differentiate altruism from pro-social behavior, to learn the 5 crucial steps proposed by Lantney and Darley, to become aware of basic motivations underlying pro-social behavior. In this module, first we are going to see some definitions of pro-social behavior. Pro-social behavior is any behavior that is intended to benefit another person or persons. This definition is given by Dunfield in the year 2014. Stubb in the year 1979 defined pro-social behavior as voluntary behavior intended to benefit another person. Voluntary emphasizes the spontaneous initiative by the actor in contrast to professional help. Pro-social behavior may include helping, sharing, giving and comforting. This definition is proposed by Berhoff in the year 2002. The American Psychological Association defines pro-social behavior as exhibiting behavior that benefits one or more people. Next, the meaning of pro-social behavior. From the above definitions, it is clear that pro-social behaviors are defined as helping behaviors or behaviors that support others. These behaviors are connected with high moral standards and benefit society. Pro-social behaviors are voluntary in nature and apply to the betterment of others. There are variety of situational, emotional and dispositional influence on helping behavior. Here comes types of pro-social behavior. Pro-social behavior can be distinguished into 3 subtypes. They are proactive, reactive and altruistic. Proactive behaviors are self-serving in that there is a benefit to the individual for exhibiting certain characteristics. Reactive behaviors are responses to a need recognized in others. Next, altruistic behaviors are entirely for the benefit of another person with no other ulterior motives. Altruistic behaviors are different from proactive and reactive behaviors. Altruistic behavior is motivated by nothing more than the selfless desire to help others. Proactive and reactive behaviors are considered as reciprocal. Now, let us try to distinguish between pro-social behavior and altruism. Though pro-social behavior can be confused with altruism, they are in fact 2 distinct concepts. Pro-social behavior refers to a pattern of activity, whereas altruism is the motivation to help others out of pure regard for their needs rather than how the action will benefit oneself. A familiar example of altruism is When an individual makes an anonymous donation to a person, group or institution without any resulting recognition, political or economic gain, here the donation is the pro-social action and the altruism is what motivates the doer to action. Altruism is generally defined as any form of voluntary act intended to favor another without expectation of reward. Perhaps the first person to utilize the term altruism was the French sociologist Auguste Comte, who declared that humans have inborn drives to behave sympathetically toward others. It is a specific kind of motivation to benefit another without consciously considering for one's own self-interest. In other words, altruism refers to a kind of selfless help which is based on pure desire to help others. Nevertheless, altruism is not a synonym for pro-social behavior. Pro-social behavior refers to helping behavior of favoring another person with the goal that may involve benefits to self. Now, we are going to see the historic roots of pro-social behavior. There is evidence that voluntary actions that benefit others are rooted in human and animal behavior. In the 1970s, biologist Edward O. Wilson began a new field, sociobiology, to study social behaviors of animals and humans as motivated by the organism's biology. Wilson used documented examples of helping within many animals and insect species. Since the publishing of his innovative textbook, many books and articles have been published asserting that helping and even rescuing behaviors are innate in primates, helper bees, ants, wild dogs and other species. Naturally, developmental psychologists and other social scientists point to the animal world as proof that pro-social behavior is a pre-programmed biological function of humanity rather than solely nurtured or learned action. Historically, the term pro-social behavior has been used only since the 1970s. Social scientists began using the term as an antonym for antisocial behavior. The term pro-social behavior was introduced in the early 1970s after the incident of Kitty Genovese's case in USA. On 13th March of 1964, Kitty Genovese was murdered in front of her home. She parked her car a number of feet from her apartment when all of a sudden a man named Winston Moseley chased her down and stabbed her in the back twice. Kitty screamed for help and a neighbor responded shouting at the criminal, "Let that girl alone." Immediately, Winston fled the scene and left the girl crawling towards her apartment. Several witnesses reported to have seen the whole scene. At that time, there was a strong degree of interest in exploring why 38 neighbors ignored the plea and called for help from a woman being repeatedly stabbed and ultimately murdered by her assailant. Why were such apathy, indifference and lack of concern observed from all the neighbors of Kitty? Two social psychologists, John Darley and Bibb Blatley, started asking these questions: why the witnesses demonstrated a lack of reaction towards the victim's need for help and why people won't help others. They founded bystander apathy, and otherwise it is known as bystander effect. It is the major factor that influences helping behavior. Dear learners, now let us see what is bystander effect. Bystander effect refers to the phenomenon in which greater the number of people present, the less likely people are to help a person in distress. When an emergency situation occurs, observers are more likely to take action if there are few or no other witnesses. Therefore, bystander effect means that the likelihood of a prosocial response to an emergency is affected by the number of bystanders who are present. In a series of classic study, researchers Bibb Latley and John Darley in the year 1969 found that the amount of time it takes the participant to take action and seek help varies depending on how many other observers are in the room. In one experiment, subjects were placed in one of three treatment conditions: alone in a room, with two other participants, or with two confederates who pretended to be normal participants. As the participants sat filling out questionnaire, smoke began to fill the room. When the participants were alone, 75% reported the smoke to the experimenters. In contrast, just 38% of participants in a room with the two other people reported the smoke. In the final group, the two confederates in the experiment noted the smoke and then ignored it, which resulted in only 10% of the participant reporting the smoke. There are two major factors that contribute to the bystander effect. First, the presence of other people creates a diffusion of responsibility. Because there are other observers, individuals do not feel as much pressure to take action, since the responsibility to take action is thought to be shared among all of the present. The second reason is the need to behave in correct and socially acceptable ways. When other observers fail to react, individuals often take this as a sign that a response is not needed or not appropriate. Other researchers have found that onlookers are less likely to intervene if the situation is ambiguous. In the case of Kitty Genovese, many of the 38 witnesses reported that they believed that they were witnessing a lover's quarrel and did not realize that the young woman was actually being murdered. A body of research evolved to illuminate the psychology of giving, helping and sharing. The subsequent body of research on pro-social behavior has been fruitful. A noteworthy model is the 5-step decision-making process of helping behavior developed by Darley and Latley in the year 1970. In this module, let us see the 5 decision points in pro-social behavior. Latley and Darley proposed a model regarding emergency situations. He proposed that the likelihood of a person engaging in a pro-social act is determined by a series of decisions that must be made quickly by those witness an emergency. In such cases which warrant immediate help, a bystander passes through 5 different stages. At every step, he or she has to take decisions before helping the person in need. The pro-social response to an emergency has been conceptualized as the end point of a series of 5 steps or choice points. At each step, an individual either becomes less likely or more likely to engage in a pro-social response. The 5 steps or choice points are as follows. Number 1, notices something unusual in the situation. Number 2, interprets it as an emergency. Number 3, assumes responsibility to help. Number 4, knowing what to do, assessing ability to take action. And the last step is decide to implement help. Let us discuss one by one in detail. First one is noticing the emergency. Bystanders must notice that an emergency has occurred. He or she must first recognize that whatever is coming is not normal, usual or common. It is a problem. Sometimes very trivial thing such as how much of a hurry a person is in can prevent them from noticing someone else in trouble. The second step is interpreting an emergency as an emergency. The next determinant of helping is whether the bystander interprets the event as an emergency. Ironically, When other bystanders are present, people are more likely to assume an emergency is something innocuous. This pluralistic ignorance occurs because people look to see others' reactions when they see that everyone else has a blank expression. This is called informational influence, and they assume that there must be no danger. The third step or choice point is assuming responsibility to help. The next step is someone has to take up the responsibility to help. When there are many witnesses, there is a diffusion of responsibility, the phenomenon whereby each bystander's sense of responsibility to help decreases as the number of witnesses increases. Everyone assumes that someone else will help, and as a result no one does. The fourth step is knowing what to do, that is assessing ability to take action. Even if all the previous conditions are met, a person must know what form of assistance to give. If they do not, they will be unable to help. A pro-social response cannot occur unless the person knows how to be helpful. When emergencies require special skills, usually only a portion of the bystanders are able to help. The last step or choice point is making the decision to help. Even if a bystander passes the first 4 steps in the decision process, help does not occur unless he or she makes the ultimate decision to engage in a helpful act. Helping at this final point can be inhibited by fears, often realistic ones, about potential negative consequences. In effect, potential helpers engage in cognitive algebra as they weigh the positive versus negative aspects of helping. In other words, they weigh its costs and rewards. Rewards for helping, that is gratitude from victim, monetary reward, recognition from peers, etc. Reward for not helping, avoiding potential danger, arriving somewhere on time, etc. Costs of helping, that is possible injury, embarrassment, inconvenience, etc. Then costs of not helping, that is loss of self-esteem. Now in this module we are going to discuss the basic motivation for engaging in pro-social acts. There are 4 major explanations of the motivation underlying pro-social behavior. They are as follows: empathy altruism hypothesis, negative state relief hypothesis, empathetic joy hypothesis, genetic determinism. The first 3 formulation, that is empathy altruism hypothesis, negative state relief hypothesis and empathetic joy hypothesis, stress the importance of increasing positive affect or decreasing negative affect. The fourth formulation, genetic determinism model, rests on the assumption that pro-social behavior is genetically determined, that is, such behavior evolved because it enhances the reproductive success of individuals or of groups. Let us discuss one by one in detail. Empathy altruism hypothesis. Batson and his colleague in the year 1981 offered the empathy altruism hypothesis. They suggest that at least some pro-social acts are motivated solely by the desire to help someone in need. Such motivation can be sufficiently strong that the helper is willing to engage in unpleasant, dangerous and even life-threatening activity. Compassion for someone in need outweigh all other consideration. The next is the empathy altruism hypothesis states that feeling of empathy for another person produce an altruistic motivation to increase that person's welfare. In the empathy altruism hypothesis, the term empathy refers to feelings of compassion, sympathy, tenderness and the like. Altruism refers to a motivational state in which the goal is to increase another person's welfare as an end in itself. In fact, research findings indicate that empathy consists of three distinct components. They are emotional empathy. Emotional empathy is an emotional aspect which involves sharing the feelings and emotions of others. Next is empathetic accuracy. This is a cognitive component which involves perceiving others' thoughts and feelings accurately. The last thing is empathetic concern, which involves feelings of concern for another's well-being. The next theoretical explanation is negative state relief hypothesis. It is an approach opposite to empathy altruism hypothesis. It proposes that the pro-social behavior is motivated by the desire to reduce painful emotions. In other words, person does a good thing in order to stop feeling bad. The knowledge that others are suffering or more generally witnessing others in pain can be distressing. To reduce this distress in ourselves, we help others. Empathetic joy hypothesis is the next theoretical explanation. The basic idea is that a helper responds to the need of a victim because he or she wants to accomplish something and interpersonal accomplishment is rewarding. And another implication of this proposal is that it is crucial for the person who helps to know that his or her action had a positive impact on the victim. The next theoretical explanation for pro-social behavior is genetic determinism, that is helping take place as an adaptive response. Genetic roots are well established for most human physical characteristics, and many behavioral characteristics also have a genetic base. Our human characteristics have been selected through evolution purely on the basis of their relevance to reproductive success. Therefore, any physical or behavioral characteristics that facilitates reproduction is more likely to be represented in future generation than are other characteristics that either interfere with reproductive success or simply irrelevant to it. Studies of various species indicate that the greater the genetic similarity between two individual organisms, the more likely it is the one will help the other when help is needed. Evolutionary theorists have coined the term selfish gene to describe this phenomena. From this perspective, altruism does not necessarily benefit the individual who helps, but is adaptive because adaptation is not limited to the individual and his or her reproductive fitness, but also to inclusive fitness, which means natural selection that favors behaviors that benefit whoever shares our gene. From a more general perspective, each individual organism needs to live long enough to reproduce or at least to enhance the reproductive odds of other individuals who are genetically similar to himself or herself. In effect, fitness is enhanced by providing resources for genetically similar others. To conclude and sum up, pro-social behavior is any act that benefits others. In this module, we have discussed the meaning, the types of pro-social behavior and the difference between pro-social behavior and altruism. We have also studied the 5 crucial steps or 5 decision points proposed by Latney and Darley, which increase or decrease the likelihood of pro-social behavior to occur. It is also highlighted in this module the 4 major formulations and their socio, psychological and genetic explanation for pro-social behavior. Thank you.